It's never acceptable when a dog is aggressive, but when that dog gets aggressive to a pet parent, that's an emergency. I'm on my way to help a young woman who says her dog has turned against her.
What really happened to Cesar Millan's dog whisperer? Part 1. What does it take for a television phenomenon watched by millions around the world to suddenly disappear? For nearly a decade, Cesar Millan's dog whisperer was one of the most recognizable shows on television. Week after week, viewers watched in amazement as aggressive, fearful, and seemingly uncontrollable dogs transformed before their eyes. Families who had lost hope found solutions. Dogs that appeared impossible to manage suddenly became calm companions. To many viewers, Cesar Millan seemed almost unstoppable. But then something unexpected happened. Despite enormous popularity, the show quietly came to an end. No dramatic farewell. No grand final season. Just a surprising conclusion that left fans asking the same question. What really happened to Dog Whisperer? Was it because of criticism from experts? Legal problems? Falling ratings? Or was something happening in Cesar's personal life that viewers never saw? The truth is far more complicated than most people realize. Behind the success was a story filled with controversy, pressure, heartbreak, and survival. And to understand why Dog Whisperer ended, we first need to understand the man at the center of it all. Because long before he became known as a Dog Whisperer, Cesar Millan was simply a young man with a dream that seemed impossible. The story begins in Culiacan, Mexico. Growing up on his grandfather's farm, Cesar developed a fascination with animals at an early age. While other children played games, he spent hours observing dogs, studying how they interacted with one another and how they reacted to people. Even as a child, he noticed something unusual. Dogs responded differently to him. They seemed calmer around him, more trusting, more willing to follow his lead. At the time, he couldn't explain why. He had no formal training and no scientific understanding of animal behavior. What he possessed was something much harder to define, an instinctive connection with dogs. As he grew older, that connection became a passion. But passion alone wasn't enough. His family lacked the financial resources needed for veterinary school, and opportunities were limited. Yet Cesar refused to let circumstances decide his future. Instead, he made a decision that would change his life forever. At just 21 years old, carrying little more than $100 given to him by his father, he headed toward the United States. His goal sounded almost unbelievable. He wanted to become the best dog trainer in the world. For most people, it would have seemed impossible. Cesar didn't speak English. He had almost no money. He had no connections. And he was entering a completely unfamiliar world. Yet he kept moving forward. The journey was difficult from the very beginning. After arriving in Southern California, Cesar experienced periods of homelessness. There were nights when finding food was a challenge. Some days were spent simply trying to survive. According to Cesar, there were times when the dogs he worked around seemed better cared for than he was. But even during those difficult moments, he never lost sight of his goal. He took any work he could find. Dog grooming, dog walking, cleaning kennels, anything that allowed him to remain close to animals. And while others may have viewed these jobs as temporary work, Cesar saw them as opportunities to learn. Every dog became a lesson. Every interaction became experience. Slowly, his reputation began to grow, not because of advertising, not because of celebrity endorsements, but because people noticed results. Owners who struggled with difficult dogs started seeing changes. Word spread through neighborhoods and communities. One satisfied customer led to another. Then something happened that pushed Cesar's career onto a much larger stage. A newspaper article in the Los Angeles Times highlighted his unique dog-walking business. Suddenly, people were paying attention. Among those who noticed was actress Jada Pinkett Smith. After watching Cesar work with dogs, she recognized something special. She believed he had the potential to reach millions of people. But there was one major obstacle: his English. Jada encouraged him to master the language if he wanted to communicate with a wider audience. Cesar took the advice seriously. He hired tutors, studied constantly, practiced every day. For years, he focused intensely on improving his communication skills. That determination would eventually open doors he never imagined. By the early 2000s, Cesar Millan had built a loyal client base throughout Los Angeles. His clients included celebrities, business leaders, and everyday dog owners. More importantly, people believed in his methods, and soon television executives started paying attention too. In 2004, a small program premiered on National Geographic Channel. Its title was simple: Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan. At first, almost nobody expected much from it. The network gave the show limited promotion. Episodes were short, the budget was modest, and the time slot wasn't particularly impressive. Everything about the show suggested it would quietly disappear after a season or two. Instead, the exact opposite happened. Viewers became fascinated. Every episode featured dramatic transformations. Aggressive dogs became manageable. Fearful dogs gained confidence. Families regained control of chaotic situations. Watching these changes unfold felt almost magical, and audiences couldn't get enough. Unlike many reality programs that relied on manufactured drama, Dog Whisperer offered something different: hope. People saw real families facing real problems, and they watched those problems get solved. The emotional impact was powerful. Word of mouth spread rapidly. Viewers recommended the show to friends and family. Ratings climbed. The network expanded episode lengths. Primetime slots followed. Then international audiences discovered the series. Before long, Dog Whisperer wasn't just successful. It was a global phenomenon. The show aired in dozens of countries. Millions tuned in every week. By its peak, reports suggested that roughly 11 million Americans watched regularly, while millions more followed internationally. Cesar Millan had become one of the most recognizable faces in television. His philosophy seemed simple enough for anyone to understand. Dogs needed calm leadership. Owners needed confidence. And balance created harmony. For countless viewers struggling with difficult pets, those ideas felt empowering. The success transformed Cesar from a local trainer into a worldwide celebrity. Books followed. Speaking engagements followed. Media appearances followed. Everything seemed to be moving upward, but success often creates something else: attention. And attention attracts scrutiny. The larger Dog Whisperer became, the more people began examining the methods behind its success. Questions started appearing. Some experts praised the results. Others weren't so convinced. What initially seemed like minor criticism would eventually grow into something much larger. A debate was beginning, one that would challenge Cesar Millan's reputation, divide the dog training community, and ultimately play a major role in the future of Dog Whisperer. And behind the scenes, the pressure was only beginning. Because while millions of fans saw a man confidently helping dogs and changing lives, a storm was quietly gathering around him. A storm that would eventually threaten everything he had built. What really happened to Cesar Millan's Dog Whisperer? Part 2. By the time Dog Whisperer became a worldwide sensation, Cesar Millan appeared unstoppable. Millions of viewers trusted him. Television networks loved the ratings. Dog owners praised the results they saw on screen. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But behind that success, a different story was beginning to unfold. A story filled with criticism, controversy, and pressure that would slowly grow larger with every passing year. And eventually, those pressures would become impossible to ignore. As Dog Whisperer continued attracting massive audiences, experts in animal behavior began raising serious concerns about the methods being shown on television. For years, Cesar had promoted the idea that many dog behavior problems came from owners failing to establish themselves as pack leaders. His philosophy centered around concepts like calm authority, discipline, and leadership. To millions of viewers, the explanation seemed logical, but many scientists strongly disagreed. Animal behaviorists argued that modern research no longer supported the dominance theory that formed the foundation of Cesar's approach. The idea of constantly asserting dominance over dogs, they claimed, was based on outdated studies of captive wolves conducted decades earlier. More recent research suggested something very different. Wild wolf packs function more like family units than rigid dominance hierarchies. As these findings gained acceptance, critics began questioning whether Cesar's television advice reflected current scientific understanding. The debate quickly intensified. Veterinary behaviorists, trainers, and animal welfare organizations openly challenged the show's message. Some argue that certain techniques shown on television could increase fear or anxiety in dogs rather than reduce it. Others worry that inexperienced viewers might attempt similar methods at home without understanding the risks. The criticism became impossible to ignore. Articles appeared in newspapers. Experts gave interviews. Professional organizations issued statements. What had started as isolated criticism was becoming a widespread public debate. And suddenly, National Geographic found itself in an uncomfortable position. The network had built its reputation around science, education, and credibility. Now, some respected experts were accusing one of its most popular programs of promoting outdated ideas. It created a conflict that grew more difficult to manage every year. Yet despite all the criticism, viewers kept watching. Ratings remained strong. Fans continued supporting Cesar. And many dog owners insisted his methods had transformed their lives. The show was caught between two realities. On one side stood millions of satisfied viewers. On the other stood a growing number of professionals questioning the science behind what they were seeing. Neither side seemed willing to back down. As the controversy expanded, another problem emerged, one that networks fear even more than criticism: legal trouble. In 2012, a lawsuit involving a dog that had appeared on the program created unwanted headlines. While details were disputed, the situation introduced a new level of concern. Criticism could damage reputation, but lawsuits could create financial risk. For television executives, advertisers, and insurance companies, that distinction matters enormously. Every controversy now carried potential consequences. Every incident generated scrutiny. Every episode created the possibility of another headline. Behind closed doors, conversations began changing. Executives who once focused only on ratings now had to consider legal exposure, public relations concerns, and brand protection. The atmosphere surrounding the show was becoming increasingly complicated. And there was another challenge emerging at exactly the same time. Public tastes were changing. The dog training world was evolving. Positive reinforcement methods were becoming more popular with mainstream audiences. Many newer trainers focused less on dominance and more on rewards, trust building, and behavioral science. Programs featuring trainers, such as Victoria Stilwell, introduced viewers to a different philosophy, a philosophy that felt more aligned with modern research. For the first time, Cesar Millan was facing serious competition, not just from critics, but from changing cultural attitudes. The landscape that had helped create Dog Whisperer was slowly shifting beneath its feet. Yet, even these growing professional challenges were only part of the story. Because while critics debated training techniques and networks weighed business risks, Cesar was fighting a battle far more personal, a battle no audience could see. In February 2010, tragedy struck. Daddy, Cesar's beloved pit bull, passed away at 16 years old. For viewers, Daddy was a familiar face. For Cesar, he was much more than that. Daddy had been his companion long before television fame arrived. The dog appeared alongside him during countless training sessions and became a symbol of the calm, balanced energy Cesar often spoke about. Wherever there was tension, Daddy seemed to bring stability. Wherever there was chaos, Daddy brought calm. Losing him was devastating. For years, Daddy had been a constant presence in Cesar's life. A source of comfort, a source of confidence, a source of emotional support. When he died, it left a void that was difficult to describe. But heartbreak was only beginning. Just 4 months later, another shock arrived. After 16 years of marriage, Cesar's wife, Illusion, filed for divorce. The timing couldn't have been worse. Still grieving the loss of Daddy, Cesar now found himself facing the collapse of his marriage as well. Two of the most important foundations in his life had suddenly disappeared. The emotional impact was enormous. Publicly, Cesar continued working. He continued filming. He continued appearing confident. But privately, he was struggling more than anyone realized. The pressure became overwhelming. The grief became unbearable. And eventually, everything crashed. Cesar later revealed that he fell into a severe depression. Feelings of guilt, loneliness, and failure consumed him. The man who spent years teaching calmness and balance could no longer find those qualities within himself. The contrast was heartbreaking. Millions viewed him as a symbol of confidence, yet behind the scenes, he was fighting one of the darkest periods of his life. Then came the moment that shocked many of his supporters, a moment few saw coming. Overwhelmed by emotional pain, Cesar attempted to take his own life through an overdose. He was later found unconscious and rushed for medical treatment. Fortunately, he survived. But surviving forced him to confront a reality he could no longer avoid. Something had to change. Recovery did not happen overnight. There was no quick solution, no miracle transformation, only slow, difficult rebuilding, step by step, day by day. Cesar focused on physical fitness. He returned to routines and structure. He immersed himself in work. Most importantly, he began confronting the emotional wounds he had spent years trying to carry alone. The experience changed him. It gave him a deeper understanding of mental health. It taught him that strength is not the absence of vulnerability. Sometimes strength means admitting you're struggling. Sometimes strength means asking for help. And sometimes strength means surviving your darkest moment and continuing forward. While Cesar fought to rebuild his personal life, Dog Whisperer was approaching its own crossroads. The controversies hadn't disappeared. The legal concerns remained. Audience habits continued evolving. Production costs increased. And the energy surrounding the show was no longer the same. Many people involved sensed it. Something felt different. The excitement that once fueled every season seemed harder to maintain. The pressures were coming from every direction at once. Eventually, National Geographic made its decision. After 9 seasons, Dog Whisperer came to an end in 2012. There was no single reason, no single scandal, no single event. Instead, it was a result of many factors colliding at the same time. Scientific criticism, legal concerns, changing viewer preferences, business realities, and the immense personal struggles Cesar was enduring behind the scenes. Together, they created circumstances the show could not overcome. For fans, the ending felt sudden. For those closer to the situation, it felt like the conclusion of a long and complicated process. But surprisingly, the end of Dog Whisperer was not the end of Cesar Millan. Far from it. Many expected him to disappear from public life. Instead, he reinvented himself. He launched live tours where audiences could watch him work with dogs in real time without editing or television tricks. He returned to television with new programs. He built a massive online presence. He reached younger audiences through digital platforms. And slowly, he rebuilt both his career and his personal life. Years later, Cesar introduced new projects that focused not only on dog behavior, but also on human behavior. His message evolved. The conversation evolved. And despite continuing debates about his methods, his influence remained undeniable. More than a decade after Dog Whisperer ended, people still discuss Cesar Millan. Some admire him. Some criticize him. Many do both. But regardless of opinion, few can deny the impact he had on dog training and popular culture. His story is ultimately bigger than television. It's a story about ambition, about controversy, about success and failure, about grief and survival. And perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that the people who appear strongest on the outside are often fighting battles nobody else can see. The Dog Whisperer may have disappeared from television screens, but the story behind its rise and fall remains one of the most fascinating chapters in reality TV history. Because sometimes the most important transformations aren't the ones that happen to dogs. They're the ones that happen to the people trying to save them.